University of Florida. And I graduated in 1990, and then I left straight for California because I knew that I wanted to go to college there, but I, couldn't afford it. My father couldn't afford it. And so I've been out in California since then, since 1990. So,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you miss Miami?
I come here a lot.
Yeah.
And who wrote the foreword to my book is my Vedanta guru or teacher, Swami Jyotirmayananda, and his ashram is here in South Miami. So that changed the way I came to Miami. Before knowing him, I didn't have a spiritual place to land here. I had to deal with family things and just,
right.
But then knowing him and developing a relationship with him, that gave me a place, a refuge to come visit family, but then go there every day and do what I loved, was to, seek God.
Yeah.
And be with a sage, even though it wasn't my original guru. Once you get to a certain point, you realize that truth is one, and you enjoy hearing it in many languages, in many ways. So
that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate sitting with him, and I realize that everything he says is not different than what Yogananda says. It's just different. He says it in a different way.
Right.
And so it's just a nice, it was a blessing in my life. It wasn't coincidental that he happened to live in my neighborhood where I grew up.
Right. Because what are the chances?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't, you can always say, gosh, I wish I knew of him when I was in high school. But things happen when you're ready for them to happen.
Right.
When that's available to you. And I was ready. I was already a devotee of Yogananda's for many years prior to that. And so I was able to appreciate him. And plus, I tell the story in the book that, my guru is Yogananda, and I don't want to be disloyal to him. And he looked at me with his sage-like eyes, and he said, that's perfectly fine. The world you will experience will become your guru. And that's what manifested. I learned that. Right. He helped me learn that. And I know that my guru allowed that to happen. If he didn't accept that, he would have stopped me.
Right.
And I had other confirmations that helped me to embrace that and just respect him as a teacher as well, and that he can help me in my guidance, and in my evolution. So that's the whole purpose, right?
Yeah, that's the title of your book.
That's
the
right.
Evolution Revolution.
Yes.
Which is very powerful, because, when you think about it, isn't that what we all intend to do? Evolve and become better every single day. But do we really do that?
Well, some are conscious of that,
right,
and making that effort, and some are doing it unconsciously, right? So they're doing things and seeking things, but they don't realize what they're really seeking, right? They're looking for people, places, and things to find happiness. But what they're looking for is pure consciousness, that divine intelligence, God, whatever you want to call it. They're looking for that.
The connection, you mean?
Well, they're looking to realize that what they're looking for is inside of themselves.
Right.
Right. So they're connecting to people, places, and things, but those things are inside of them. The love that you think you get from your husband you're not getting it from your husband. You're getting it from within yourself. You're experiencing it. It's something that's inside of you, and you're sharing it with another person, right? But nobody gives you love. Love is not something you give. You give compassion, you can give respect, appreciation, but love is your natural state of existence. So, what we're doing is seeking love, we're seeking contentment, we're seeking happiness, and the only place to find that is within yourself. Anything else is not real. It's a false form of that contentment, right? So you take it away and then you're missing it, and then you replace it. So what every human being is doing constantly is just following a vicious cycle of take, give, back and forth, and you're just going through life, playing this game.
Right.
And we call the game the world process, right? You ignore what you really are, a soul, a light, and then you go outside of yourself to fulfill that void, that emptiness. And that's why we fill our lives with so many complexities, so many desires, and we don't have much time to spend going inside of ourselves because we have to feed people, work, pay bills, and we've lost the purpose of real existence, of what life is really meant to be, which is to evolve, to grow, experience love in all of existence. So you learn to love and be in that love, no matter where you are and who you're with. It's perennial. It has no end. And we say in yoga that it is pranava. It is eternal. Once you open it inside of yourself, you love everyone. You love everything. You love all aspects of nature. And all of nature is beautiful, not just your dog.
Right.
Right? Fish are beautiful, birds are beautiful. And that's what evolution shows. When you're growing in that experience, then you're evolving. Right? That's the main thing. And that's why that's the basic sort of theme of the book, is to ask yourself that question.
Right.
Am I evolving? And I want everybody to sit with themselves for a moment, at least a few minutes a day, walking, sitting, writing, just to ask that question over and over again. Am I evolving? And what does it mean to evolve? And I explained the sort of culmination of that experience, but there's other aspects to evolution, having more patience, being more resilient to the world, right? So as my teacher often says, not having any buttons. You're not triggered by anything.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's the toughest one.
Yeah.
But if you can develop that, then you can enjoy the world more.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
You can go here, go there. A person can say this and that. Somebody can bump into your car. Hey, okay, sorry about that. Let's fix it. Rather than create conflict with the world, you learn to see these events, these people, these things in the world as something that you need to listen to.
Right.
Right. And that's another aspect of the book, is how to apply yoga in the world. We're not talking about postural yoga, right?
Right. Not the hour that you're in the studios,
Right.
just
That's right.
in your everyday.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a living yoga.
Yes.
It's a moment to moment yoga. And it begins by listening, listening to the world, to the people, to the events in your life, to nature speaking to you. Everything is there. That's divine. And God, whatever you want to call it, and I repeat that term because some people have an aversion to the term God.
Right.
Some people have an aversion to hearing God being called Muhammad or Jesus, or however you see that pure consciousness, that pure intelligence. It's important to know that it's always trying to guide you. It's always trying to get you to listen to the something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step of yoga.
Is that what we call like our gut feeling, that instinct?
That's an aspect to it. Yeah. So that relationship is the mind-body listening.
Okay.
Right. So there's a relationship of listening to your body.
Mm-hmm.
There's a relationship to listening to your mind and what's going through your mind, because if your mind gets too active, then it, in one sense, it gets cloudy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of thoughts there. And so that can tell you something, right? You may feel anxious, you may feel angry. So we're not saying act on the emotion or act on the state of your mentality, but listen to it. Why is it agitated? Where is that coming from? And again, inquire, question. Why is it that when I go into this space, I start to feel a certain way? And so you question and then you inquire that. So the body sends messages to us, the mind sends messages to us. They're both working together.
Right.
And our friends, the circumstances in our life, all of those things are opportunities to listen to the divine.
Absolutely. How do we learn to trust and not become doubtful when you get that intuition?
Yeah. So trusting is a term that we refer to as in yoga Sanskrit, it's called Ishvara Pranidhan. So first step is to reflect, introspect. Okay. So the more you introspect, the more you inquire who you are. Am I a body? Am I the mind? Am I an emotion? Am I a police officer? Am I a baker? So you start to inquire and you get inquisitive. So that's the first step to developing trust. So it's often referred to as self-study. Study yourself. At
Right.
the end of the day, sort of reflect on how you spoke to others, how you dealt with certain challenges, maybe at the office, all of those things. So this is the first, swadhyaya. The second is tapasya, is develop some type of discipline so that you are more in control of this body that you're in, this car that you're driving around in. And keep in mind that you should have discipline over your body because the mind controls the body. And so this tapasya is very important. And it means not only discipline over the body, but discipline over your thoughts. If you're thinking negative, be aware of that. Change those thoughts, right? If you know that eating ice cream at 10 or 11 o'clock at night is not good for you, exercise discipline.
Right.
right? If you know that when you drink a certain thing or watch a certain program at night that it is very violent and it disturbs your sleep, exercise discipline so that you can sleep better and don't watch that type of content. So self-study, self-discipline leads to surrender. Trusting is a form of ultimately surrendering. Surrender is basically the cornerstone to all forms of yoga. And surrender means that trusting means that you know that you have done your best in any circumstance or task, and you're allowing the divine hand to take over.
Right.
Right? So you do your best, and then the divine force, the universe, your previous karmas, whatever is in place, will do the rest. And this is a very high level of yoga. It's a very high level of practice, but it truly comes from your own self-reformation. You know, some people will say, well, I trust you. You have paid me back in the past, so I trust that you'll pay me in the future.
Right.
That's not the type of trust we're discussing,
Yeah.
right? That's based on a condition,
Mm-hmm.
an external condition. This type of trust is a trust in the divine. It's the highest trust, and it also is dependent on being completely fearless. We cannot ever trust in God unless you are fearless.
Right.
As long as you harbor fear of any type, you will always be vulnerable to being violent, to defend and protect yourself. Because as long as there's an ounce of fear in you, you're going to protect yourself from being hurt.
Right.
But
You're on the defense.
You're in defense.
Yeah.
So ahimsa, nonviolence, is not really just an omission of being compassionate. It is trusting. It is being fearless. It is also having a very calm mind.
Do you think that Western culture and Western religions tend to approach God from a fearful place?
Yes, particularly the Abrahamic religions are very much based on that. And that if you don't do a certain thing or see the God in a certain way, that you will encounter suffering, that you will go to hell. And so the whole of those traditions, those religions, have really done more to segregate the world than to unify the world.
As we see now.
As we see now.
Yeah.
And you can see that 2,000 years of religion hasn't done a whole lot for the world, right? What religion encourages anyone to kill, right? Anything, right?
Right.
And what religion encourages anyone or justifies any destruction of nature and the way that we use nature and live on the planet is really what we refer to as adharmic. It goes against religion. What is the root of religion? The root comes from Greek to relegate, to relate to link to or connect to. And so unless religion is teaching you to see the world, to see nature as yourself, it's not working. It's not working. You are not separate of all life, all living things. And how you see the divine is up to you. Religion shouldn't decide for you what God looks like. That's you. It's personal.
Yeah.
It's your relationship with that.
I love that. Because so as I told you in our previous conversation, I'm Cuban, and we tend to be Catholics, or at least my family is. But I felt very lucky because I had a very interesting upbringing with religion. So like my neighbor was Baptist, and I could go to church with her and sing hymns. The neighbor down the block was a medium, so we would hear about that. And there was always this very like, we're Catholic, but there's all these other approaches to God that you can take.
That's right.
And do you think someone who comes from a Western religious background can approach Ayurveda and yoga and make that transition easily?
Yes, I think yoga and Ayurveda help people,
right,
of all religious types, recognize the one singular truth that exists, and to help people appreciate and respect how they connect to the divine is unique and special to them.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, with regards to the Abrahamic religions, is that God is not male. God is not just a man.
Right.
God is equally man and woman. God has both feminine and masculine attributes, right? And so this factor is very important. And when you look at all more ancient wisdom traditions and the cultures of indigenous societies, like even Mexico had Mayan, Incan. You go to Africa, you had the Egyptian, you have the even Iranian or Persian culture had the Sufis. So a lot of these ancient traditions recognized both aspects, and there was a deeper connection to nature that was slowly abolished during the religious and the Abrahamic religious movement.
Right.
And I would just say to most people following the religions is that you need to question your relationship with the divine, see how you connect to the divine, and is it working for you?
Yeah.
Is it bringing you happiness?
Do you feel safe and fulfilled, and
are you evolving?
Right.
Is it helping you to evolve? Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Because isn't that what you're here to do?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the purpose of life? To grow in your evolution? Yes, we have to bring that back to the forefront of our lives, right, and not just make it about buying toys and joys.
Yeah.
It doesn't last. And so things are changing.
Do you think our Western loss with spirituality is in correlation to all these issues that we're seeing as far as like mental health issues, this state of extreme unhappiness that everyone seems to?
Yes, I think we have many obstacles to overcome.
Yeah.
We have government obstacles. We have dogmas that exist within the religions that have become major obstacles. And we have our own societal and sort of cultural obstacles, each, and humans have become so overly conditioned, right? and trapped in belief systems that they don't know how to think outside of that. They don't know how to step outside of that, and it's scary for them. And that's what this work is about. This path is about being courageous, to question, to search, and to look outside of this little thing we call history. Because history is layers upon layers of narratives, stories, political ideologies that were very egoistic, very patriarchal, and they weren't designed to help all humans. They were designed to help specific sort of
Right.
kings, queens, empires, and we're basically still overcoming empirical rule. It's still relatively fresh. We went through thousands of years of empires upon empires trying to enforce a certain way on their people, and all of them had the same thing in mind: take over the world,
Right.
control the world. And that didn't work, obviously. And in many respects, we're still trying to climb out of that, and modern religion is still a result of that. And I explain that in the book that, Jesus became the guru of the West,
Mm-hmm.
right? He
It was
never
so
made it to the
interesting the way
West,
you put that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he never came to America.
Right.
He never really left the area that we know of as Israel, separate of his visit to India. And the Christians won't really necessarily acknowledge that,
No.
particularly the Catholic Church. You ask most Christians if they know that Jesus practiced yoga, they have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, do you realize that he spent more of his life in India than he did in Israel? And they don't also know that either.
It shakes the preconceived notions too much.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And more people are questioning that. And I think the sad thing is that tradition won't accept it until it's proven scientifically. And there's enough evidence to say, okay, now science has proven it. Now you can't debunk this.
Yeah.
But the yogis don't need science to prove anything to them. They recognize Jesus as a brother to them, right? If Hindus are willing to embrace Jesus as a brother yogi and a great teacher, then why isn't it the reverse?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why do
That's
we,
such a good point.
right?
Yeah.
The religions practice exclusivity and are far from practicing inclusivity.
Which makes no sense.
Makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the Vedic culture and the Vedic tradition, right? There's no one teacher.
Right.
There's no one guru. He's neither male nor female, right? The teaching, the body of knowledge comes from where? Cosmic intelligence, the intelligence that comes from the light. Where does the light come from? From the planets, from the sun, right? There's 7 days of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Do most people know why there's 7 days of the week? No.
Probably not.
Well, right, 7 major planets.
Yeah.
Right? What do those planets symbolize? Our consciousness. Right? We have different levels of consciousness. So everything about this great teaching and this great tradition is common sense. It's
Mm-hmm.
practical, right? It's connects life on Earth to a grander cosmology. And it tells us that life on Earth is not separate of what's happening in the universe. We're part of a grand universe and we're all working together. We're all many universes. Your body is a
Right.
mini universe. You have a body, we call that the Earth. You have a mind, we call that the moon. You have a soul, you are the soul.
Right.
That's the sun, Soleil, right? So we forget that the sun, the moon, and the earth are it's what makes up your body, your life. And so that's why the understanding of this is the study, right? We want to encourage people to learn and to practice, right? Learning is comes from the term Veda. That's the body of knowledge. It's not my knowledge. I'm just disseminating it. I'm just sharing it. It's universal. It's for everyone. It's in nature. The animals have intelligence. They know that at a certain time each year or several times a year, they need to do certain things.
Right.
And they do it every year. They don't change. But we know certain things. We experience certain things within our body and through our mind. And we know that they aren't necessarily good, but we keep doing them.
Yeah. Right.
We go against what?
And then we wonder why
we have
why isn't this changing, or why am I getting different results?
And why am I unhealthy? And why am I not content? And because you're not listening to natural laws. You're not abiding by natural laws. Those laws are universal, right? Respect, compassion for others. It's universal.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is a big conversation.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the relationship between the moon and the earth?
Well, in the practical sort of in the astronomical sense, the moon is the closest planet to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Moon is symbolic of mother, feminine energy. And for this reason, the bond between child, earth, and the moon, mother, is the closest.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. So that's why the mother feeds the baby through her breast. That's why in Ayurveda we teach that the mother should stay very close to her baby, right? Because the baby develops a sense of safety. The baby is fed breast milk, which is the nutrition the child needs to develop its bones and its tissue structures. And this mother-child, earth-moon relationship, because they're so close, makes the mother the first teacher. So when you come into the world, you're coming in through who? Through from the mother's womb, out and down, right? You don't come up through her, you come down through her to where? To the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And she brings you as a piece of the earth into the earth, right? She bleeds, fluids come out, and you are linked to her through what? A cord. That cord is the link of the moon and the earth. What is that? Moon is the mind. The earth is what? Is your body. And where is that cord? We know that the moon, the mind, is connected to the heart. You know that this nerve, particularly the vagus nerve, is the largest nerve that links the mind brain to the heart. So if you think a certain way, your brain sends a signal to the heart. So again, moon planet and the Earth are intrinsically connected. They're very close, and they have their cycles. Obviously, every month they move around each other. That creates a timing on the planet. Nature has its response. So this is the primary relationship, and this is why the moon is so important in Vedic culture, because the moon is your mind. Your moon is how you feel, your connection to your heart. And your moon tells us more about who you really are than the sun does. So one of the things that I share in the book is that the issues that we started, the complexities that began on planet Earth in this particular cycle, have a lot to do with the zodiac and the calendar.
Right.
And we changed the calendar, to appease an empire and worship and support of the Christian tradition. And we went from a lunar-based calendar, which was always used in Asian societies, which referred to actually as a solely lunar calendar. We eradicated that calendar. And the Western world, because of Constantine and the Roman Empire, we began to follow the solar-based calendar, or what became known as the tropical zodiac, and we follow seasonal-based timings, and the dates of the year, like the new year, is fixed. It's always on December 31st and January 1st. But that wasn't the case in solely lunar-based calendars. The new year changes because the moon has a changeable quality to it. And so my view is that as we start to return back to a more balanced sun-moon culture, and this expansion of yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedic tradition throughout the world, we will bring greater balance onto the planet when we make this calendar correction. And I think it's inevitable that we will move back towards this type of a calendar.
So you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think we're some time away. I don't want to make any predictions,
Yeah.
but as we move in this ascending age towards a higher age now, it's inevitable because it makes common sense.
Right.
It embraces the fact that the moon influences the earth. We can't disregard the moon's cycle in life on earth. It brings importance. And what does that say? Think about that. The moon is a changing energy, right? It ebbs and flows. It creates tides.
Right.
It creates a fickleness in the mind, right? It makes us emotional, right? The moon governs emotion in a person. So what is bringing this solely lunar relationship back? I want people to understand it's not just a literal fixing of a calendar. It means that your mind plays an important role in your evolution. Evolution is not just something that we measure and change on the level of the body. Okay. And the mind plays a role in our relationship with the divine.
Right.
That the mind and how we see the divine is unique to each and every person. If you want to see the divine in a certain way, then you may see it as an animal, as a woman, as a piece, an aspect of nature, a river or a mountain.
Right.
And so that there's a fluctuating quality there, and that means that every mind is different. So
Right.
this is what we have to realize and be practical that things change. The moon changes things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the beauty of embracing the moon, is that nothing is consistent.
Yeah.
Things are
Yeah.
always
I mean,
evolving and changing. So,
right.
yeah.
And if I'm trying to remember, and if I remember correctly, every other culture and religion that's not Western has a moon aspect integrated into their belief system, into their culture. We don't.
That's right. And we have to turn to the east,
Yeah.
right? Because the east is where the sun rises and where we have the ancient wisdom is there.
Yeah.
The Chinese um, have an adoration to this Kuan Yin. And she's kind of their mother of compassion. Christianity has Mother Mary.
Mary.
And Magdalene and other forms there that I think ultimately can bring a greater balance within our Christian tradition, and recognize that Jesus had that relationship. And there's this sort of kind of sun moon relationship between Jesus and Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice that relationship is very sacred, and it exists in life. Planets have their relationships. Animals have their relationships, and we have our relationships. So it's an important thing.
Definitely. I want to refer back to a piece of the title.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the rise of soft power culture.
Yes.
What can you go a little bit into that? What does that mean?
Yeah. So the rise of the soft power culture is a reference to the soft powers of yoga, Ayurveda, the use of the great Vedic astrology. They're rising in their use and recognition throughout the world. Soft power means that they're powerful, but they're soft.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that term because we have become accustomed to hearing hard power.
Yeah.
Which is a term that refers to war weapons.
I see.
And I, as a student and as a longtime devotee of the Vedic tradition, I think that the powers of that ancient tradition of yoga, Ayurveda, and astrology play a major part and can play a major part in the evolution of the world. In my view, those soft powers will save the world. It'll save our world cultures from destruction.
Yeah.
We have seen, if you look back at other ancient civilizations, they have disappeared.
Yeah, they've perished.
And they're countless. There's
Mm-hmm.
many, many, many. And they perished for a reason. However, there is an eternal tradition that's in Renaissance. Yoga and Ayurveda and these soft powers date back thousands and thousands of years. In fact, they predate Christ many thousands of years. They were intact. They were in a glorious golden age where material abundance and spiritual abundance both coexisted during those times. This is often referred to as the golden age, the Satya Yuga. And so if we continue to turn towards yoga, Ayurveda, astrology to manage our lives, these systems will help us, and they will help us to continue to evolve, to promote peace, harmony, and wellness throughout the world. As soon as we bring this into our life, for every individual out there, if you bring these practices into your life, they will begin to change the relationship you have with all living things. They work.
Right.
They work on you.
Yeah. That's something that you said that stayed with me during your talk. You said, and I'm not quoting you exactly, but change me, not my circumstance. And, it's been almost a week, and I think about it every day. Because I don't want to speak for everybody, I usually focus on changing the circumstance. If I change this, if I figure this out, then I can move on.
Right.
But really, and you put it so eloquently, if I change me and how I approach the situation, that's the fix end all, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say that is a quote. I paraphrase that quote as it is in the book, but it was originally said by a Sri Gyanamata, who's a great saint, a disciple of Yogananda's. But the basic point there is that Vedanta explains that Maya exists,
Mm-hmm.
that the world is not real. Okay. And what you see in the world and what you're experiencing in the world of time and space, right, is a projection of your consciousness. You're in this body, you have five senses that go outward. And what those are sending in terms of signals and information to you are reflections of your own consciousness. The most common, and thankfully cinema developed in the last century, this metaphor is that the screen is the world.
Right.
The projector is your consciousness, your mind.
Mm-hmm.
What you're projecting is the conditions that you have developed in your mind. When you remove the story, the narrator, what do you have? Pure consciousness, a blank screen.
Right.
The world is light. It's just pure white. Everything that you see is one. You realize that you and everything are the same. So the work of yoga and this great teaching is to change yourself, because when you change yourself, then what you're seeing in the world is changing. It's
Mm-hmm.
different, right? So this is the basis for personal responsibility. Every single person is responsible for the world that they see and the world that they create. And this this is essentially where all the work begins. And the book explains, well, how do you change what you're projecting? How do you change your movie? Well, 4 steps. Listen.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing? I'm not talking about, right, listening with your ears. What is the world telling you? What are you seeing? And properly listen to that. There's a message there.
Right.
Then learn from it. Okay. This is what I got to do. This is what I got to change. So you learn. Then give love. So be in love and experience love because of the lesson that you have just learned.
Mm-hmm.
So when you listen and when you learn, you grow in love.
Right.
Your state of love expands, your state of love. And then you're able to give love in the form of compassion, appreciation, service to others. Here, let me help you.
Right.
Do you need anything? And then the last step is to let go, is to know, now move on and go on to the next thing and grow and continue to grow and grow and expand in your consciousness and in that connection, that link to pure consciousness. It's in you, it's in everything. So remove the clouds, and what do you have? Beautiful sky. You can see the stars, you can see the blue. But when the sky is cloudy, the mind is cloudy, what do we have? Thoughts, 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 constant, like a monkey.
Yeah.
And then thoughts produce what? Emotions.
And that brings a whole other set of...
And what does emotion do?
Yeah.
Emotion produces what I refer to as action-reaction dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
You see someone act a certain way, you react. You recreate what you just saw.
Right.
That's emotion. Emotion reacts. Right? It's not a real thing. You can't say, I'm an emotion, right? What is it? You can't, it's not tangible. But we've developed such strong associations with our emotions. We live in a world that is purely reactive. We're just recreating everything that we see rather than just listen to it, observe it, learn from it. And as you develop in this process of listening and learning and loving, you begin to shift your own mental psychology. Your own use of the mind goes from reactive to responsive. A person who responds is coming from a higher place. They're coming from a place of higher awareness. A person who reacts to a circumstance is coming simply from a condition.
Right, which is very limiting.
Very limiting. It's a pattern in your mind. It's stored in your brain. I explain this in the book. And this is an area in the brain that has been studied much in the last 10, 15 years. And fortunately, there's been a lot of research in this area on how to undo this emotional part of the brain and how to kind of untrigger it.
Right.
It
feels like science is finally catching up to all these ancient teachings.
Yes. It's
is that
finally
safe
catching
to say?
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say if they'll ever get there.
Right.
Right, because they're two different domains. One is measuring time and space dynamics, science, and the other is spirit,
right,
consciousness. So it's what's behind all of this. Science can't measure consciousness. Science can't ever justify karma, rebirth.
Right. Can we talk about karma? Can you explain the concept?
Well, that's a big topic.
I feel like for us Westerners, we all know the little saying, karma's a expletive and karma is going to get you. But
That's right.
what
That's right.
really is karma? Do we
Yeah.
even know what we're talking about when we say these things?
No.
No.
Well, I think the terms have become very generic,
Yeah.
and we have bastardized a lot of these terms: yoga, mantra, guru, karma, and people don't realize the depth of it. But karma is basically means that for every action, every form of energy, right? An action is a form of energy.
Right.
Energy in terms of an action, a physical action, a verbal action, and a thought action. Thoughts are actions, energies. For every form of action, there is an equal reaction. And that means that whatever you do the most, you become. Whatever you say the most, you manifest. Whatever you think the most repetitively, you create. And we have to understand that because nobody does anything to you. Nobody or the world isn't out to get you. Right?
Yeah.
You are the manifester.
Right.
Right. And
you play a role. You have a responsibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's the whole basis for this work. You can change yourself. As Swamiji says, you're the architect of your destiny. Sculpt it the way you want to see it. Create the life that you want to create. You are the master. Right. And learn to master your body, learn to master your mind. And as you do, mastering your body is the science of Ayurveda. Teaches us how to take care of it and how to live in the world, in nature, and how to eat right and follow the seasons and apply these things. And yoga is a system of mind management.
Right.
Learn to manage your mind. When you learn to manage those two things, life and the chance for a more harmonious life increases tremendously. Tremendously. But when we do nothing and we just follow the Joneses, job, marriage, house, kids, travel, good food, fine. Do all that. Great. Then what?
Yeah. What's left?
What's next?
Right.
We're not saying those things are bad.
No, I completely understand what you're saying. When you go blindly into doing things, there's a cost, right? To your soul, to your consciousness.
Right.
Yeah.
I use the metaphor of you drop a little crumb on the floor. You're having your muffin for breakfast. And there shows up an ant. Once that ant shows up, I can assure you many more will show up, right? And they form a huge line.
Yeah.
The word spreads fast. Same in human life. One person does one thing, all the rest of the ants follow along. But they don't know why they're following. They don't know what the first ant found.
Right.
They're just hearing and assuming there's something going on and I need to follow the rest of those ants. Right? And they're filing in line and I know there's something at the end of that line.
Right.
Well, I would say before you get in line and before you start marching like the rest of the ants, question. Where is this line going? And what am I marching for?
Yeah.
And do that before you spend a lot of time in that line, because you've done that thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And so you get to the end of the line and you may get a little bit of the crumb that's left, whatever, if it hasn't already been eaten. And then you realize that I waited all this time for that, and it isn't what I'm looking for.
Right. Maybe you didn't even want that crumb.
That's right.
And
you wanted a bran muffin and you got a blueberry muffin.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
So you got to know, question, and know what you want, and know what the divine looks like for you, what it feels like for you, and what affinity you have with the divine. Have that. We want everyone to have affinity. It's beautiful. But just be clear as to what it looks like, and respect that the way that you feel it and connect to it is going to be different than the way even your own partner connects to it. Even maybe your child is going to see it differently.
Right.
And that's okay. Yeah. That's what's beautiful about this world. And this world is diversity. Right? So,
when you mention that we've done that line 1,000 times, are you referring to past lives?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, you're attracted to a certain thing because it's familiar to you. You're attracted to a certain person because they're familiar to you. You're attracted to a certain place, foods, because you've eaten them and done them before. And so where you finish in your last life is where you leave off. This is why it is most important not where you start, but where you end. You may start broke in your life. You may start with a lot of problems and challenges, but what's most important is what you do to transform those, change those, and leave this world striving, doing good, being positive, because that's where you start again.
Right. Have you had, well, I'm sure you have, any of those experiences where you've been somewhere and you've had that feeling that you've been there before?
Happens all the
time.
All
the time? Yeah.
When you meditate and when you do this work, it helps you to look at the world and work with the world as a guide, speaking to you constantly.
Right. Is time linear? That is a stupid question.
No, that's a good question.
Sorry.
Yes. So how is time created? Well, it's created by the cycles of the planets, right? And time is on Earth is cyclical. Okay. And that means that what you've experienced and what you're connected to, you've experienced before somewhere in the cycle. Why is time cyclical? Because when you look at planets, they rotate in a circular motion. They have a binary motion.
Right.
They don't move in squares. They don't move in triangles. They're spinning around each other. And so is our life. We move up, we move down. Sun rises half of the day, sun sets half of the day, right? And so when you look at the span of 1 year, 12 months, the sun spends 6 months going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, and it reaches a point. We call that the summer solstice.
Mm-hmm.
This is June. Then July, August, September, the sun starts to get lower and lower and lower in the sky, right? So that's a cycle. And that cycle takes 12 months, and that cycle repeats itself. So, yes, our karma is repeating itself. But to break from it, we have to go up in our consciousness, right? So the manifest world is consciousness descending. It's come down. That's why we have gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Throw something up, it falls. So consciousness has descended. It's heavy. To break out of the cycle, we must ascend in our consciousness, go up the ladder. And there are many ways to do that. And it's wonderful that yoga provides many great techniques and approaches to that, the chakra system. But the practical way, the way that I teach in this book, is based on Vedanta. And it says, Sarvesham swastir bhavatu. Wish well for the world. Sarvesham shantir bhavatu. Peace for the world. Sarvesham purnam bhavatu. May there be contentment. And sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. May there be auspiciousness for all. And so we wish that everyone focus on all that is good.
Right.
All that is positive. Because when you do, now you ascend and you begin to break the cycle of karma, of time and space, and you puncture the domain of pure consciousness, where it is pure stillness, it is purely timeless, it is sanatana, it is eternal. Joy is limitless, love is limitless in that domain. And so we're all here trying to rise up in our consciousness. So, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yes,
when you asked
totally.
About that question.
Totally.
Science follows a more linear perspective.
Yeah.
Though. We were dumb.
Right.
Now we're smart.
Which, I mean, up for debate.
Major debate.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with that.
Right.
But yes, that you explained it perfectly. It makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you about the dark night of the soul, as it becomes a term that I guess has gained popularity. Where does that fall into?
Well, that term is referred to in the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the great. Yes,
I have it.
Yeah, so that is one of the most recognized and important sacred scriptures of Indian Vedic culture. And the dark night of the soul is a reference to the soul's journey in an embodied life when it loses its direction and its sense of purpose. And that dark night can be months, can be years, can be lifetimes.
Ooh.
Yes.
I was hoping you didn't say that.
So the important thing to learn about the dark night, again, the term dark refers to moving away from the light, being lost in the darkness of the world and the world process, right? And so it's important to know that when you have an opportunity to grow in your evolution, you recognize that something needs to change in your life, and you start to see the synchronicities in your life. Look at that as a very auspicious window. That may not come for a long time.
Mm.
If you don't cease to look out that window and look to this new direction, the window may close, right? Cycles change, our astrology changes, and you may be pulled far away from that.
Wow.
So you manifest those openings, you create them through your own evolution. But they're not always there, right? That divine force, God, intelligence, isn't just sitting there waiting for you day and night, knocking all the time. There are specific sacred periods when you have that opportunity. And so we have to make sure that if you go into a dark night, be careful, because you could be in it for a long time. And that's where, reading good books, listening to good podcasts that endorse positive messages, being with positive people, all of that is part of supporting and creating a support structure for a person's evolution. So
Will every person have this moment in their life?
it's yes,
Yeah.
it's not a straight and rosy path to the top,
Mm-hmm.
right? We fall. That's part of it. We just have to keep going. And no matter how difficult those times are and how hard it may feel, you can't give up. You have to keep trying, right? Because every positive effort that we make is recorded. So keep focusing on making the effort. You're increasing in your discipline, you're garnering greater willpower, and you may not see the change right away, but the change is happening energetically.
Right.
It's being stored there in that piggy bank. And eventually, as the effort continues to pile up, suddenly it changes. The habit changes, the circumstance changes, and that's the beauty of this work. Everything changes.
Do you think, based on what the world is going through right now, it's a symptom of this type of issue, this dark night of the soul, in a planetary level? Is that even a thing?
So that's a different perspective. Yeah. So dark night of the soul typically refers to an individual's journey, but you're asking whether that exists for the world, in the sense that would mean that everyone on the planet is has had an awakening. They're moving and making a conscious effort to evolve, and they've just taken a misstep or they've fallen. I don't know that is the what's actually happening.
Right.
I think what's actually happening is that most of the world is living unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a highly conditioned state of consciousness. And the darkness that we see in the world and the complexities are a result of unconscious living.
Yeah.
Now, there are a small percentage of people in the world that are living a conscious life, that are following a plant-based diet, that are praying and meditating, serving humanity, listening to the world, all of those things. And do they take a misstep? Do they fall at times? Are they having some challenging periods, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly happens. And so that's okay. So those are two different things
Yeah.
that you know.
How important is it to follow a plant-based diet?
It's not everything. It doesn't mean that you can't evolve not following it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that at some point in your evolution, it will happen because it's natural law.
Right.
So just because a person isn't eating a plant-based diet, it doesn't mean that they're not evolving. The reverse is the same. Just because a person is following a plant-based diet, it doesn't necessarily mean that they may be evolving. They may be doing other things in their life that is very contrary.
That's interesting.
To their evolution. Now, I will say this, that if a person has gotten to the point where they're following a plant-based diet, it may be because they did in a past life, and that's what they knew, or it is a very subtle step. It's an indicator that something is changing in that person. And they've made a very advanced movement with regards to their diet, but yet everything else in their life may not be parallel to that. So does it mean that other changes will come? Probably, possibly, if they continue. Let's say they follow a plant-based diet, and now they're hanging out with a lot of people that meditate, that do charity, that speak kindly to others and do all of those things. Well, now that's a plus.
Right.
But if they're eating a plant-based diet and then spending the rest of their day gambling, cheating, watching trash TV, and many things that intoxicate the consciousness, then it's not really going up too far. And so there's so many ways to look at these things,
Right.
So many perspectives.
I want to go back to the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were born here in Miami?
I was born actually in the Midwest, in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Only because my grandmother and my two uncles were living there, and my parents went up to visit, family. And I was born up there, but we didn't really live up there. I was raised here in Miami.
Right.
Since I was probably 5 years old, 4 or 5.
And your parents are?
My parents are both of Cuban descent, actually.
Right.
Yeah. Most people don't know that. I'm often asked what my background is, and I like to say I'm a 3-part equation. I have Cuban blood, an American heart, and an Indian soul.
That's perfect. That is perfect.
In this embodiment.
And right now, for the time being.
Yeah. But I've had many other cultures, and, as we all have, we're not just of one.
Right.
But in this one, that's the narrative. And that's the story.
So how did you go from, living in Miami with Cuban culture, I'm sure, in your household, to discovering this?
Yeah, very different life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously points to karma.
Cuban meals.
Yeah.
Just for starters, you have your, pork and all those other things.
Yeah.
Very different.
It points to karma, basically. It shows that I obviously lived a very different life before. I'm drawn to a culture that I never knew in this life, right? But yet it feels so familiar to me. it's easy for me to study it. I understand it. The language, the culture, the books, all of those things. Where does that come from? I didn't get that here in Miami. No, I didn't get that going to
Definitely
a
not.
Catholic school. No, far from it, right?
Right.
So again, that's where the previous life points and the previous lives, plural.
Hmm.
Just doesn't, these things happen repeatedly, especially when you get to a point where it is my life. It is the purpose of my life. Obviously, it was very strong for multiple lives prior to that.
Right.
And perhaps it's happened to me, and it's to a Latin born individual, so that I can help people awaken and look to a new life,
Yeah.
especially in a place in this part of the United States that's become more of a South American and very Hispanic type culture. Just really the most southern part of Florida, because the rest of Florida is very different.
Hmm. Yeah, we're like a little bubble.
Yeah, it's just a little bubble here,
Yeah.
but I there's many things I still appreciate about the culture, about Hispanic culture. Um, but there's many things that I've learned have much to do with a very a history that has been skewed and that isn't all that accurate. When you study it, you realize that, again, you learn what line you got in, what ant you are,
Right.
and what you're following, and you question, and you realize that
Yeah, I
you
got to turn back.
you got to turn back and
Yeah.
turn in another direction.
Right.
So that's what, for me, this book is about. And much of my work carries that theme: find your purpose,
Hmm.
question the nature of your existence, tread your own path, and I did that. And it wasn't easy. It's not an easy change. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of judgment,
Right.
and there's a lot of sacrifice. Obviously, you leave, you go to another place to struggle, you don't know anyone. Um, and I wanted to do that. I knew I had to do that. I didn't want the cushy life that I certainly could have had here, being raised in an upper class family, a very wealthy family. And, uh, but I knew that something more important, I knew that something much more powerful was going on within me.
Hmm.
And nothing was going to stop that.
That's amazing. Yeah. What was your first trip to India like?
It was interesting, to say the least.
I can imagine. Did
Yeah.
did you get those, those feelings that come when you have that familiar?
Yes, that familiarity was there. Yeah, it was a culture shock for me, right? Um, I'd been studying the teachings of a great Western guru, and I decided to go and just spend some time there alone. I didn't know anyone.
Completely alone.
Yeah,
Wow.
I went to Yogananda's ashram and spent some time there alone with another monk. There was nobody else there. It was in the Himalayas,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, I just thought, hey, I got to do this. This is important.
Right.
Um, and more than anything, what I experienced was just a culture shock. Right, I had been raised in Florida, and very different society. And even though I had been in California for almost 10 years at that point, I was 99, uh, it was still a major shock. And it was a great teacher for me.
Yeah.
And what I realized is what actually this book is teaching is that we have to change our culture. Americana doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
for spiritual evolution. Americana is great for efficiency,
Yeah.
for material abundance, for research, and many of the things that we uh, have accomplished as a modern society. But Americana does not work for um, supporting universal and natural laws and practicing them. And that's what I'm encouraging us to do, which was the original intention of the stalwarts, the pioneers like Vivekananda,
Mm-hmm.
Yogananda, Swami Ramtirth that came over. They
Yeah.
brought this message of bridging the East and the West together. And I really feel like my work falls into the role of ambassadorship with that regard. I not only represent yoga, but to me, yoga and Ayurveda,
Mm-hmm.
they must be practiced together. And we must develop a new relationship with food, with nature, with animals, with our ecology, and not only look to an ecology as a form or some type of preservation, but look at ecology as spiritual and divine. Ecology can help us to grow in our consciousness, to grow in our connection to God and divinity. And Vedic India has been worshiping nature for thousands of
Yeah.
years. Vedic India has been worshiping the goddess and respecting the feminine divine for thousands of years. That is still in place. It is now in Renaissance after going through much oppression, much invadership of the country. And so we're blessed. The world is a great opportunity right now, to connect to this great wisdom
Yeah.
and we bridge this balance, and it's happening. We're seeing the Eastern cultures are becoming growing in their urbanness, their efficiency, their hygiene, providing more education to all individuals. Now we have to question the education because there's some
Mm-hmm.
political narratives there as well that need to be looked at. But all of these things are spreading now, both in East and West, and I think the balance is what's going to help us all as a world society.
Right.
Mm.
I love, the positive nature of your message because it, especially in the last 2 years, we've been bombarded with so much fear and, the idea that everything's crumbling and we need to be locked up in our house and just wait it out, or whatever they're saying for people to do now. Um, but I think your work and this book, it's extremely vital. um, I know it took you a long time to write this, but I feel like it came to the world at the the most needed.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. I had much of the material I had written over the last 10 years,
Right.
and I just saved it. I've presented it in lectures in different formats, but when this pandemic hit the world, I was celebrating. I thought, this is fantastic. Gosh, look how slow the world is now. Look how much time we're taking just to walk and do
Mm-hmm.
things that we have ignored. And I took it as an opportunity actually to write the book, and I got most of the book completed in the last year. And I wanted it to release. I pushed for it to release just a couple months ago, which was the end of 2021, because I knew that the message in it was very relevant today.
Yeah.
And I want to strongly encourage people not to create a sort of conspiracy theory to the world and to government leaders, but to listen to Divine Mother's message, listen to her speaking to her children. That is more important than trying to prove that your government or that your medical system is corrupt. It is probably likely that those things exist, but you gain more from listening to nature and what she has asked for by what humans have created. We have created this, right? Our collective consciousness manifests the world that we see. She's asking us to change the relationship we have with her
Mm-hmm.
in all living forms. And if we can take that message and begin to change the relationship we have with all living things, then we will grow from this lesson. Step 2, right? We will learn from it. We will grow in our love and we will surrender and fall into the divine's hands. And, I was having this discussion with a few others after the book signing I recently did. And I often say to people, look, we haven't had a global issue in quite some time. The last one of this level was really World War II.
Right.
And it's been almost 100 years since the world has felt the connectedness that it has. And we forget that our consciousness is individual, right? It's singular. We have a uniqueness about us, but it's also plural. It's also connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we live in the world influences everyone else and everything else we see and experience in the world. So it's pivotal, and thank you for recognizing that. I think it's a key time now
Yeah.
for people to read this, and we're in a revolution. It's happening. It's been happening for over 100 plus years. Um, Take advantage of that. Ride the wave. It's an important one. Open the window and really don't look, don't take for granted what is happening in our world right now.
Right.
It's it's auspicious. It's sacred. It will bring us all great contentment and peace if we link up and connect to our Divine Mother.
Right. Well, I think obviously besides reading the book, and I would say you might say it differently. I would say reading the book is the first step, just because you're such a master with words and the way you put these, which to us Westerners is it's a struggle to come to terms with these ideas and kind of wrap her mind around what all of this means. You do it in such an easy, relatable way, where the reading experience is amazing. It's excellent. So, besides reading the book, what would you advise someone who's ready to take that step and begin their journey to the divine, to create that spiritual connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. I look at it from two perspectives. One is if you want to evolve, and this is resonating with you, begin to go to spiritual places. Begin to do things that connect you to nature.
Right.
And begin to spend time with individuals that attract and bring out the best in you. And when I mean the best, it's the most spiritual in you. Your capacity to feel love. Be around people that encourage you and motivate you to feel calm, to feel peaceful, to feel connected, accepted. And if you do that, that will naturally start to help you, and doors will open where there were walls.
Yeah.
That leads you, and you'll see the next direction to go in. On the other side, if you're looking for a place, I would start with your local yoga center.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the yoga centers are the new churches, the modern churches, right? Nature is our new religion. The yoga centers are our churches. This is where we go to do what? To increase our flexibility, not just physical, right?
Mm-hmm.
To stretch our minds beyond the confines of religion, culture, right? Society. And here we go to these places to unify, yoga, union, to unite with that thing, whatever it is, however we see it, and to connect with that. And so there are many of these yoga centers all over the world now, fortunately.
Thankfully, right?
Yeah. And they struggled a lot. We lost a lot of them, sadly, during this last pandemic because these places don't really
Yeah.
make a lot. They don't charge a lot. And I encourage all of you out there that are doing yoga and that want to or now are being drawn to yoga, go to these places not only looking to get something, right, to take something from these places, but go there to give something because they need your support. Help them. Offer your time. Donate. Develop friendships there and support these places because they're sacred.
Yeah.
Any effort to practice yoga and even the physical aspects, it's a door, it's a potential opportunity to help somebody to change. It's a first step, whatever it is. So we accept, we regard, we embrace, we want to support all of those individuals that are out there teaching um, and um, and doing this is a wonderful service to humanity. So that's where I would go. Now, those of you that live in Miami, you know, Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda is still alive, still in a body. He's his ashram is here in South Miami, and as I often say, there's a sage in South Miami.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, uh, Yoga Research Foundation, and that's yrf.org. And he has produced one of the greatest bodies of Vedantic yogic knowledge that exists in the modern era. And that's accessible to everyone. And without him, this book would not have been possible. My understanding of Vedanta would have stayed at the theoretical level. And as a result of his wonderful teachings and his great compassion, the world is my teacher now. The world is my guru. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like you said, who would have thought it, right here in our city, we
Yeah.
would have somebody accessible?
Yeah. It's
That's,
there, and they have online
yeah,
classes. There's so much out there.
right.
We have great books out there. The teachings are out there. They're available. You can jump on a flight and go to India. There are ashrams everywhere. Take advantage of this. Take time for yourself.
Yeah.
Make the time. Don't wait. Everything else in the world can wait, but your search for truth cannot. Do it now. It's never too late. If you're 80, go for it. If you're 25, go for it. Doesn't matter.
Mic drop. Can't say anything better than that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for this wonderful show that you have, Miami Lit. It's a show focused on literature, but it's actually lit. It has a lot of light. You're disseminating the light of great literature and
I hope so.
Conscious literature, and books are sacred. You know, if we can read good books, these books really can carry great knowledge and help people transform their lives. So you're doing a great service in that. And listening to podcasts also helps people to expand their mind,
right,
and to reflect. It's what we would call a form of satsanga, reflective listening, or a discourse that is disseminating a positive energy. So this is great, and Miami needs this, and I hope that it extends beyond Miami, to the world. So I'm sure it will.
From your what do they say? From your mouth to God's ears?
Yes.
Yeah. That would be a dream. So thank you for your kind words. That really means a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, when you start something new, you're plagued by so much impatience and so many fears and questions about, like, what am I doing? But ultimately, it feels like I'm where I'm meant to be.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. So. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I'm humbled that you asked, and thank you for supporting the book event and spreading the word about the book. I hope that many people explore it and at least find a sentence, even a paragraph, that resonates with them.
Yeah, I think there would be a lot more than that. It is packed. I'm in awe of how much just context, historical, theological, you were able to pack in here. It's
Thank
quite
you.
A bit.
Yeah, I want, well, it's a book on evolution, so we got to explain things.
It's amazing. And the artwork is beautiful. Yeah. I know you talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah, that's Mother Goddess. That's the goddess of the earth. Her name is Lakshmi.
Yes, I don't want to butcher it, so I'm glad you said it.
Lakshmi is the goddess of abundance, and she's sitting on the earth. And so that's explained as well in the book. So everything has meaning. We don't just throw a picture there, right. And it's all aligned with a sacred intention.
Yes, definitely, and it shows. You could tell. I'm now looking forward to finishing this one and picking up your first one.
Thank you. The first one's Sun, Moon, and Earth. Yeah. The Sacred Relationship of Yoga and Ayurveda. It's a little more technical book. This one's more philosophical.
Right.
But they're both expansive type books. They're both very filled with content. I do think there is a third piece coming soon. So we'll see.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
I think there's a third part.
Any future plans for a third
a trilogy? Book? Yes. I've begun something there, and don't know exactly where it's heading, but I let the world speak to me, and much of it has to do, obviously, with what's going on in the world, because I do want to make it a better place, and I want to influence people's lives. And so, yes, without saying too much, something will happen soon.
Right. And what's the easiest way for people to get in touch with you?
So that's the website is dancingshiva.com. Dancingshiva.com. They can reach my staff or my office at info@dancingshiva.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
are the courses listed on the website as well?
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
number of courses, yoga, Ayurveda based courses.
Right.
They go from everything from the postural teachings, the mantras, breath work, Ayurvedic herbology, dietetics, astrology. They're all inclusive. They're in some respects considered teacher trainings for yogis,
Oh, I
um,
didn't realize that.
but they're also lifestyle enhancement courses. Particularly our smaller 50-hour and 200-hour courses, people take those for lifestyle enhancement.
Right.
I am doing a course here in Miami, a 4-part course starting this month in January. It's 4 hours. We will meet once per month, and it's on Ayurveda and mindfulness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that'll happen in Coconut Grove.
That's exciting. And
Yeah.
that we can sign up through the website?
That's not on the website yet. We're going to put that up, but they can email us if they're interested. It's
Okay.
info@dancingshiva.com, and it'll meet January through April, one meeting per month, and it's a 4-hour class and group that we're creating to study Ayurveda and promote mindfulness.
That's extremely, extremely exciting.
Yeah,
That's super
at a
cool.
beautiful private residence in their
Yeah.
garden. And
Nice.
so we'll serve chai and create a great experience. And then I'll teach. I mainly
Yeah.
teach throughout the whole session. So yeah.
And I have one more question for
Yes.
you before I let you go.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the importance of meditation. What advice do you have for the first time? Like, how do you approach your first time you're about to meditate?
Yeah, meditation is probably the single most advanced technique for evolution. And it is the royal path of yoga. It is a very high path, so to speak. The simple way to begin meditation is find a quiet place, sit down, and be quiet. Shut up. And a Swami friend of mine, we often say, look, it's very simple. Just close your eyes, sit down, and shut up. Start with that.
Right.
Silence, stillness, solitude. Silence, don't talk. Stillness, try not to move. And that includes the mind. So we make the mind still.
Mm-hmm.
Concentrate on something, an image, a word, reciting a word, a mantra, and then be alone with yourselves. We're not saying, you can meditate with other people,
Right.
but solitude means connect with your soul. Right.
So the first, I will share this with you. The first time I tried to meditate, I followed those tips that you're saying, and I became extremely overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay.
With, I don't even know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything became extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, that's because the mind is active. So start with less time. So if 10 minutes was overwhelming, go to 5 minutes. Everyone can do 1 minute. Just close your eyes, right? For 1 minute, and then come out of that. Now, it's not how long you meditate, it's how consistent you meditate. If you do that 1 minute every day for 1 year, it's better than an hour, 1 hour every week.
Wow.
It's the consistency of it, because you're imprinting, it's the imprint, right? You're taking an
Right.
impression in. Every time you do something, it's impressed into the brain. And so you just do that, and then a minute becomes 2 minutes. 2 minutes becomes 5 minutes. So the repetition builds the duration. So people need to realize that when they say, oh, I can't meditate. No, that's a condition. You're repeating those words out of a conditioned aspect of your mind. But you are still all the time. You lay down and go to bed.
Good point.
Right? You sit down and on a toilet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
You're on your phone.
You're on your phone for a minute.
Yeah.
Right? You wait at a traffic light for a minute. So we do a lot of things. But yet then when we go to meditate, we say, wow, it's impossible, it's difficult, but you're doing probably 20 things in your life for at least 5 to 10 minutes, and you're totally engrossed in it. You read a book for 10 minutes. So meditation's the same thing. You're focusing your attention. Meditation's about pure concentration. It's about being in the moment. So when you're reading something and you're like, wow, this is really good, that develops meditation. That's a form, you could say, of meditation because you're focused. When you're working, when you're concentrating and interviewing your guest, there's a focus there. That also increases your capacity to meditate. So all of those things are
There's
there.
hope for me.
There's definitely hope. Yeah,
well,
and I'm here, and you're attracting these types of things. My book, I see the Bhagavad Gita here on your desk.
Yeah,
Something's going on.
I read this many years ago, and I tried reading it again last year, and it's intense.
Yeah,
and I feel like the first time I read it, I did not grasp as much of it as I did the second time around.
Yeah.
Which obviously it's a sign of something amazing and sacred and extremely valuable.
Yeah, the best way to read that book is just to open it and read a verse.
Yeah.
And then the verse often will connect to something in your life at that moment.
Right. And then come back.
Then come back. So something is changing in your life. Something's happening, right? You're attracting these things.
I'm evolving.
You're evolving. You're manifesting things that are spiritual. So keep going.
Thank you.
Keep going. You're on fire.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for being here and so nice. And let me know anytime. And I'm here to serve. And
likewise.
And spread the positive news, positive media.